In 2015, El Chapo escaped Mexico's top prison. Now, the Sinaloa Cartel has hit ADX Florence, the US supermax where he's locked up. In this video, I'll break down the attack, reveal the chilling message the cartel left behind, and explain why all signs point to El Chapo's own sons being behind it. The supermax breach that shook America. They were supposed to be safe. Guards, walls, federal jurisdiction, maximum security. But on July 15, 2025, something happened at USP Florence ADX, the US supermax prison known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, that shook the entire correction system to its core. An inside source told us what really went down behind those steel-reinforced doors: a coordinated attack, infiltrators in uniform, a message smeared in blood, and the name, El Chapo. The Sinaloa Cartel didn't just break in, they broke the rules of reality, and the US government is desperately trying to contain the fallout, but it's too late. Because if the attackers can do that there, what stops them from doing it anywhere? It started like this. 2 guards didn't show up to roll call, not uncommon, but something about it felt off. A 3rd officer reportedly called it in after discovering one of the men's bodies in the staff bathroom, stuffed under a sink with 701 carved into his chest, a cartel number associated with Guzman's mythic status as a billionaire trafficker. And by 9:23 a.m., all hell broke loose. Explosives planted in an inmate laundry cart ripped open a reinforced checkpoint. By the time backup arrived, it was too late. 3 inmates were dead, 5 staff injured, surveillance footage corrupted, and most alarming of all, the attackers had vanished. But this wasn't a botched escape attempt. No one got out. This was a warning for El Chapo himself. According to an FBI leak we obtained, the hit was staged inside the most secure prison in America to send one chilling message: we know where you are, we can get in, we can get to you. Let's back up, because if you're asking why now, you're not alone. A lot of people thought the Sinaloa Cartel was finished when Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was convicted in 2019 and sentenced to life plus 30 years. But that assumption is exactly why what happened next was possible. Despite being locked away, El Chapo is still a symbolic figurehead, revered by some, hated by others. His incarceration split the Sinaloa Cartel down the middle, sparking years of infighting, power, grabs, and open warfare. And one of the most brutal factions to emerge from the chaos, a breakaway unit called Los Demonios, reportedly formed by former sicarios loyal to Ovidio Guzman, El Chapo's son, the same son who was just arrested by US authorities on July 11th in El Paso, according to the US Department of Justice.
On Thursday, the Justice Department took into custody in El Paso 2 more alleged leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel.
Now here's where it gets disturbing. Within 72 hours of that announcement, the Florence incident occurred. Coincidence? Federal sources don't think so. Multiple intelligence analysts have pointed to Los Demonios as the orchestrators of what they're now calling an interior terror operation, a targeted, brutal show of force to intimidate rivals, government officials, and even Chapo himself. And they didn't need to kill him to send a message. They just needed to make sure he heard the screams. USP Florence ADX is a fortress, home to terrorists, cartel bosses, and mass murderers, all in near-total isolation. Inmates spend 23 hours in soundproof cells with tightly screened mail and visitors. So how did a brutal, high-level attack like this even happen? Here's what we know. The breach exploited staff complacency. According to leaked internal memos reviewed by investigative reporters at The Intercept, budget cuts and staff turnover had created vulnerabilities in routine inspections, particularly in the laundry system used to transport non-dangerous materials across cell blocks. Attackers posed as contractors, using stolen badges and fake uniforms to slip in unnoticed during a routine supply drop, according to a Vice News eyewitness. To cover their tracks, someone burned the evidence. Surveillance drives were found melted in a janitor's cart, proving that the attackers knew exactly where the backups were. And this wasn't just about intimidation. There's growing speculation that someone inside the Bureau of Prisons may have helped them get in. Now let's talk about motive. Why would a cartel faction risk everything to attack the one place most likely to guarantee a national crackdown? We looked at court filings, cartel movements, and intelligence chatter, and the picture emerging is dark. Here's what sources suggest. Ovidio Guzman's capture threw the cartel off balance. In response, the US has been ramping up extradition efforts across Mexico, coordinating with multiple agencies to lock down every high-value name in the Sinaloa leadership tree. Now, there's talk of a potential plea deal, one that might even involve El Chapo himself, and if that happens, it could put his own family in danger, especially the ones still fighting to take over the business. Some believe Los Demonios launched the prison attack to stop any such deal from happening. The shocking part is, this isn't the first time the cartel has gone rogue over a Guzman family arrest. Remember 2019, when Ovidio was briefly captured in Culiacan and cartel gunmen turned the entire city into a war zone? They shot down helicopters, took hostages, and forced the Mexican government to let him go. Now flash forward to 2023, same city, new arrest attempt. This time, they brought 50 caliber machine guns and RPGs. So yeah, violence is a negotiation strategy for these guys. So what's next? That's what investigators are asking. And they're looking at another potential flashpoint, El Chapo's trial testimony vault. Most people don't realize this, but when Guzman was convicted in 2019, dozens of hours of sealed courtroom testimony were never made public for national security reasons. These tapes reportedly contain details about high-ranking government collaboration and what just happened at ADX Florence. That was the US version of Culiacan. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Inside sources say El Chapo was furious because the attack showed weakness, because the old-school narco code, the one built on secrecy, loyalty, and calculated violence, has been replaced by something else, something chaotic. El Chapo built an empire on precision. Los Demonios, according to FBI analysts, are building one on chaos. And chaos is what terrifies governments the most. But here's the kicker. Sheriff Eddie Gattis from Hidalgo County wasn't surprised.
Just business as usual for the gang activity currently operating here in Hidalgo County.
And that's because, as law enforcement insiders are starting to admit, taking out El Chapo didn't end the war. It evolved it. What's happening inside the Sinaloa Cartel right now isn't just a power struggle. It's a full-blown succession crisis, a Game of Thrones with bulletproof vests. At the center of it all, Los Chapitos, El Chapo's sons, Ovidio, Ivan Archivaldo, and Jesus Alfredo. Raised on cartel legend, each one was trained in a different corner of the family's drug empire. But here's the thing, they're not unified. In fact, cartel insiders say they hate each other's guts. And following Ovidio's recent capture in El Paso, sources close to DEA intelligence say an uneasy alliance between Ivan and Jesus Alfredo is on the verge of collapse. This isn't just about territory anymore, it's about vengeance. And some say Los Demonios, the same group suspected in the ADX Florence attack, have switched sides. Let's talk about Los Demonios for a second. The name roughly translates to the demons. They're a loosely coordinated band of ex-enforcers and loyalists who once served under Ovidio. Think former sicarios, logistics, heads, cyber guys, even corrupt local cops. Most of them were exiled or betrayed during the post-Chapo realignment, and now they're waging a shadow war inside and outside of prison walls. Their strategy is simple: no mercy, no rules, no leadership. This has made them incredibly difficult to track and impossible to predict. According to documents leaked to Borderland Beat, US Marshals recently flagged an uptick in organized assaults on BOP infrastructure linked to communications traced back to federal inmates with historical ties to the Sinaloa Cartel. And the scary part? Some of those communications came from inside Florence ADX. Now here's where things go from alarming to downright terrifying. 3 days after the breach, cyber intel agents intercepted an encrypted voice message on cartel networks. The voice was low, gruff, and reportedly belonged to a former Sinaloa logistics man known as El Cuervo. He says the words "operators, foreign shell companies, and internal betrayals that could ignite diplomatic and gangland fires alike if exposed." And guess what? There's a growing belief that someone inside Los Demonios wants those tapes, which brings us to the most disturbing theory yet, that the ADX Florence breach wasn't about sending a message to El Chapo, but a test run. What happened? Let him hear it. Let him hear everything. The walls are not enough. We can make them sing. That message was reportedly intended for El Chapo. Investigators believe it was sent using a hacked signal relay disguised as a prayer radio broadcast during an inmate's religious visitation hour. The implication is that El Chapo heard the screams during the attack in real time as a form of psychological torture. If that's true, we are no longer talking about a gang war. We're talking about a psychological war inside a prison once considered impenetrable. Let's go back to what experts are saying. Professor Guadalupe Correa Cabrera, a respected voice in US-Mexico cartel relations, made it clear in an interview with Channel 5 News that El Chapo's conviction didn't break the cartel, it just decentralized it.
So these organizations are very complex, and now they're not just led by one person.
In other words, you can lock up the kingpin, but you can't kill the kingdom. The empire is eating itself. The US government has spent decades chasing narco bosses across rooftops, deserts, and international borders, only to learn that cutting off the head does nothing if the body is already growing new ones. So what do they do now? Well, if the whispers are true, the feds are preparing to do something unprecedented. Sources inside the Justice Department told ProPublica that the ADX Florence breach has prompted a total internal security overhaul, including a full audit of all personnel with ties to cartel prosecutions, a task force created to assess cartel recruitment efforts inside federal facilities, and for the first time in US history, discussions around relocating a domestic federal inmate to an offshore black site for safety and isolation reasons. Yes, you heard that right. El Chapo may be moved again because the illusion of his isolation has shattered. As one anonymous federal source allegedly told Rolling Stone, "You can't keep someone in a cage if the cage is inside a burning house." Let's take a step back. There's been a confirmed attack inside the most secure prison in America. Cartel violence is spiking after El Chapo's son was arrested. Messages are being smuggled in and out of ADX Florence, and El Chapo, once untouchable, is now just a pawn in something big. That ADX Florence wasn't just a security failure. It was the result of years of ignored warnings, deliberate blind spots, and silent complicity. Because long before the explosion, before the Sinaloa tag was carved into a dead man's chest, the system knew, and it looked away. Let's rewind to 2022. So, what's next? That's what investigators are asking, and they're looking at another potential flashpoint: El Chapo's trial testimony vault. Most people don't realize this, but when Guzman was convicted in 2019, dozens of hours of sealed courtroom testimony were never made public for national security reasons. These tapes reportedly contain details about high-ranking government collaborators, foreign shell companies, and internal betrayals that could ignite diplomatic and gangland fires alike if exposed. And guess what? There's a growing belief that someone inside Los Demonios wants those tapes, which brings us to the most disturbing theory yet, that the ADX Florence breach wasn't about sending a message to El Chapo, but a test run. What happened at ADX Florence wasn't just a security failure. It was the result of years of ignored warnings, deliberate blind spots, and silent complicity. Because long before the explosion, before the Sinaloa tag was carved into a dead man's chest, the system knew, and it looked away. Let's rewind to 2022. That year, a now declassified Department of Justice audit flagged concerning patterns of contact between known cartel affiliates and select Bureau of Prisons staff at multiple high-security facilities. The memo mentioned bribes disguised as family transfers, guards moonlighting as off-the-books security during prison leave, and suspicious back-channel communications tied to Mexican IP addresses. The audit's final paragraph included a line that read, "We assess a high likelihood of operational compromise at ADX Florence within the next 18 months if identified personnel are not reassigned or removed." You know what happened? Nothing. Why? Because no one wanted to admit Florence could be breached, and so the guards stayed. The system kept churning, and the countdown began. Now, fast forward to 2024. A whistleblower at USP Florence, using the alias Watcher17, submitted an encrypted dossier to the Marshall Project. It outlined a disturbing pattern of ignored red flags, inmate accounts showing deposits way beyond allowed limits, contraband phones turning up in staff lockers, and most chilling of all, a handwritten note found in a broom closet that read, "Not everyone works for you." That letter, Watcher17 claims, was written on commissary paper only sold in a Mexican regional facility, not Florence. Someone was moving prison supplies across borders. You see, while Los Demonios made headlines for their brutality, what scares officials the most isn't the bullets, it's the logistics. These guys have gone fully transnational inside the prison system. Here's how it works. It usually starts in a low-security facility, somewhere like a minimum security prison in Arizona or New Mexico. Outside operatives quietly buy influence, trading cash, contraband, and small favors to get staff and inmates talking. Once trust is earned, the real intel starts flowing. Transfer schedules, vacation windows, camera blind spots, the kind of details that can flip a facility inside out. That info doesn't stay local, it's passed up the chain through burner phones, rigged mail, or even religious book swaps, one of the most overlooked smuggling tricks in US prisons. By the time a major move happens, like the hit at ADX, the operatives on the ground are spotless. No gang tattoos, no priors, just the right fake credentials to slide past a sleepy checkpoint like they belong there. And when the job's done, they disappear into the wind. So now the question becomes, how far up does this go? Because the truth is, cartel money doesn't stop at the prison gates. It climbs into the courtrooms, the transport vans, and sometimes even the judges' chambers. A bombshell investigation by Los Angeles Times found that between 2016 and 2021, over 30 federal employees were charged with taking bribes from cartel-linked sources, many of them in the corrections or immigration system, and those are just the ones who got caught. Now combine that reality with what's happening post-breach, the secrecy, the sealed reports, reports, the vanishing whistleblowers, and we're looking at a system too embarrassed to admit how compromised it really is. And here's where we land on the darkest part of this story. That sealed testimony vault we mentioned earlier, it may no longer be safe. We spoke to a legal aide familiar with the Guzman case who claimed that at least 3 sealed files related to cartel financial operations have been quietly relocated from Florence to a federal courthouse in Denver. And since the ADX breach, there's been increased chatter on cartel-linked forums referencing this courthouse by nickname La Caja de Huesos, the Bone Box. And what's worse, one of the files reportedly includes the name of a former DEA informant who was recently found dead in Mexico City, his body left near the US Embassy with a chess piece, a knight, shoved in his mouth. The message was clear: you moved a piece, so did we. By every indication, we're looking at a fully operational covert network, one that infiltrated the most secure prison in the United States, used encrypted communications to torture their own former leader, and is now targeting federal records that could expose their entire financial backbone. All of this within 1 week of Ovidio Guzman's arrest. Coincidence? No, it's retaliation, and according to intelligence insiders, it might not be over. The Bureau of Prisons released a short, vague statement about the ADX Florence incident. Here's what they said: a serious disturbance occurred in a secured section of our facility. The situation was contained and remains under investigation. There is no indication that any inmates escaped or that public safety was at risk. Now compare that to leaked audio from a nearby staff radio, recorded during the incident and published by Cartel Chronicles. In the audio, a voice was heard saying, "We've got multiple bodies, at least 3 down. Somebody cut the feed. We've lost comms on B-Wing." So what does this mean for El Chapo? That's what everyone's asking, because right now, he's the target. And the people coming for him, they want to make everyone pay, including the man who built the empire in the first place. Even if it means burning the whole thing down, there's a saying inside ADX Florence: if you hear noise, it's already too late. But on July 15th, 2025, everyone heard it. It started with a pop, not an explosion, at least not at first. More like a crack of compressed air, followed by the slowest, deadliest silence anyone had ever felt in a prison built for the loudest monsters. Then came the fire, then the screaming, and for 49 minutes, what was once thought of as the most secure facility on US soil became a lawless battlefield. We now have a minute-by-minute timeline pieced together from leaked Bureau of Prisons shift logs, a surviving guard's audio diary, and forensic reconstructions reviewed by Vice and The Intercept. Here's what went down. At 7:48 a.m., the first shift change goes into effect. Senior Officer Matthew Albright scans in, standard security protocol. The day starts off quiet. Surveillance feeds are normal. Albright's assigned to Block C. It's 2 wings away from Guzman's cell, but close enough that any unusual noise from that sector has to be reported immediately. At 8:12 a.m., the phantom ping sounds. A motion alert from hallway C3 registers on the control board. Officers check the camera feeds, nothing visible. It's flagged as a sensor glitch, dismissed. Then, at 8:26 a.m., the access breach is logged. 2 individuals in contractor uniforms are buzzed in through the south loading dock. Names: J. Delgado and T. Benitez. Their IDs check out, but there's one problem. Neither name appears on the official delivery manifest. At 8:41 a.m., there's a sudden power surge in security room 4. Emergency lights flicker on briefly in hall C. Officer Albright radios it in as a maintenance issue. The system logs it as a temporary inverter failure. But here's the thing, the power never actually went down. What really happened? Someone looped the live surveillance feed using an external transmitter, a technique known in cartel circles as La Niebla, or the fog. At 8:53 a.m., the first explosion hits. A device hidden inside a laundry cart detonates near checkpoint B3. A 4-inch reinforced steel door is blown off its hinges. Debris flies. One guard loses both legs. Another is killed instantly. Inmates start screaming. Panic protocol kicks in, but by then, it's already too late. The attackers are already inside. You're probably wondering, how did explosives get into the most heavily searched facility in the US? Well, here's the theory presented by a DOJ investigative report leaked to ProPublica. The laundry cart wasn't filled at Florence. It was transferred from a lower security federal warehouse where screening protocols are notoriously lax. And the kicker, one of the listed contractors on that shipment manifest, J. Delgado, had previously been arrested in Sonora for weapons trafficking, but never officially deported. His current status? Unknown. But that was just the beginning, because in the following minutes, the plot thickened. The cartel's endgame. At 9:04 a.m., Security Hall C3 in ADX Florence goes dark. By this point, chaos has already broken loose. 2 attackers, still unmasked, move with precision through Hall C3. They're looking for specific targets, and we now know one of those targets was a man named Rafael Cardenas, an ex-cartel logistics accountant turned state informant. Cardenas had been quietly transferred to Florence under a fake name in 2024. What they did to him? Unprintable. Sources told the Daily Beast that his body was mutilated in a ritualistic fashion fashion, with one eye removed and cartel symbols burned into his torso. This wasn't just revenge, it was a message to future traitors. At 9:15 a.m., it becomes clear. The attackers have strict orders. Make sure Chapo hears everything. They reach the perimeter near cell B1, where Guzman is locked down, but they don't try to break in. Instead, they plant a speaker, and it starts blasting a 37-second clip of screaming victims through the vent system. According to one staff account, it echoed through the walls like a ritual chant, and then, just as suddenly, the speaker shut off. At 9:18 a.m., the system finally reboots. Lockdown protocols kick in, but something's off. The attackers are gone from the feeds. Thermal sensors can't find them. Why? Because they changed clothes. Security footage recovered later shows two of the attackers slipping into stolen guard uniforms and walking directly past a camera checkpoint, faces turned away, and then they're gone. At 9:23 a.m., the fire alarms go off, not because of a fire, but because someone inside pulled every alarm switch at once. In the panic, 5 inmates are trampled, 3 are severely injured, 1 is later confirmed dead. At 9:30 a.m., federal response teams swarm the site. Doors are sealed, airspace shut down, every vehicle stopped, every perimeter checked, but the attackers were never found. All tools, devices, and clothing used during the operation were burned in a janitorial cart near the exit gate, the same place where a surveillance hard drive was later found melted into the floor, and just like that, it was over. 49 minutes, 3 dead inmates, 5 wounded staff, a system left humiliated, a message sent loud and clear: we can find you anywhere. 3 days before the breach, a BuzzFeed reporter received an encrypted file dump from an unknown sender, using the alias 702 Ghost. The folder contained CAD blueprints of ADX Florence, including outdated but still functional maintenance routes and access codes for utility tunnels. That same alias was later traced to a darknet account with ties to both Mexican cartel forums and Ukrainian ransomware collectives. Investigators now call it the cartel's third front. Not drugs, not guns, but information warfare. Los Demonios aren't just machete-wielding brutes anymore. They're teaming up with hackers and ex-cyber mercs to breach systems from the inside. And ADX Florence was just their demo tape. Let's shift to one of the most chilling post-breach details: El Chapo's reaction. According to a leaked internal memo, Chapo was visibly shaken for the first time since his incarceration. A staff psychologist described him as restless, angry, and muttering threats in rapid Spanish, not toward the US, but toward his own blood. That's important, because it suggests the breach wasn't for Chapo, it was against him. And now, he knows the empire he built is coming after him from inside. Finally, we need to talk about the next possible target. Multiple intelligence units, including DEA Task Force 716 and Interpol's Organized Crime Cyber Division, are now monitoring chatter pointing to a federal courthouse in Denver. That courthouse, it holds backup copies of sealed Guzman testimony, including financial records that, if made public, could dismantle half the current cartel leadership. And the chatter isn't vague. On a darknet channel, scraped by cybersecurity group Hydra Ghost, a user with a verified cartel tag posted the following: "Caja de huesos soon, time to bury what's left." And remember that phrase? Caja de huesos, the bone box? It came up earlier in the video. That courthouse may be next. And if the Florence breach taught us anything, it's this: they don't make threats, they send warnings. It started as a prison attack, but by now, you've probably figured out this isn't just about a prison. This is about a new kind of cartel, one that doesn't care about borders, rules, or even its own bloodlines. One that has shifted from bullets to bandwidth, and from loyalty to leverage. And at the center of it all, a shadow operation no one saw coming. Not DEA, not Interpol, not even the old heads of Sinaloa themselves. They call themselves Division 8, and if the leaked intel is right, they've already made their next move. Let's rewind. 2 weeks after the ADX Florence breach, a Department of Homeland Security intelligence bulletin was quietly distributed to upper-tier agencies. The bulletin flagged a growing alliance that connects former cartel logistics engineers, cyber mercenaries out of the Balkans, and rogue paramilitary units operating along the Guatemala-Mexico border. It was a joint task force alert, stamped with the seal of DHS Counter-Narco Intel Group. The report named a new threat vector: Division 8, a covert unit that allegedly split from Los Demonios but still answers to its central command. Their role was simple: extract information, sabotage digital systems, and eliminate threats. And the reason no one in law enforcement saw it coming is because they're not cartel in the traditional sense. They don't draw attention to themselves. They're ghosts, and now they're inside US systems. Here's the chilling part. Multiple cybersecurity researchers confirmed that during the exact window of the ADX breach, anomalous logins were detected on DOJ internal servers from an IP in Panama, routed through at least 4 VPNs and an unlisted Mexican satellite uplink. The login was traced to a user tag known as D8LOC1. Now, unless the Bureau of Prisons suddenly has new field agents named Division 8 Local 1, That means one thing: they were already in before the attack, before the world even noticed. Let's pause for a second, because if you're still picturing the Sinaloa Cartel as guys with gold chains and AK-47s, you're already behind. These guys aren't just moving drugs anymore. They're moving intel, digital blueprints, weaponized ransomware, and the home addresses of law enforcement families. And guess who leaked that last one? Division 8. Here's how it started. A Colorado-based cartel informant, known publicly only as Diego C., was moved to a secure location following the Florence attack. He had been cooperating with federal agents on a low-profile case involving cartel crypto laundering, but something spooked him. According to leaked court transcripts, he demanded immediate extraction. He told his handler, "You don't get it. It's not the cartel anymore. It's something else. They know where your kids live." Just 12 hours later, he was found dead in a parking garage, strangled with a phone charger cord, a folded Division 8 symbol stuffed in his back pocket, a stylized 8 shaped like an infinity loop with a cracked skull in the center. Now let's address the rumor that's kept every US Marshal awake since Florence: the kill list. Yes, it's real. No, it's not confirmed by DOJ publicly, but we've spoken to two different whistleblowers, one from the US Marshals Fugitive Task Force and another from ICE's Criminal Intelligence Wing, and both confirmed that a list of 26 names tied to the sealed El Chapo testimony has been circulating on cartel forums. At least 7 of those names have already experienced unusual threats, surveillance, or direct harassment, and 3 are dead. And here's the gut punch. The list includes US federal employees, anyone who touched the vault, anyone who knows what Chapo gave up in those sealed statements. Remember those testimony tapes? The ones we said were moved to a courthouse in Denver? Well, according to a memo obtained by The Intercept, a backup copy was scheduled for digital upload to a DOJ encrypted server in Maryland. The transfer was cancelled last minute. Why? Because Division 8 had already breached the Maryland network 3 weeks earlier. That's right. The feds tried to move the most sensitive cartel files across state lines, and the cartel was already waiting at the endpoint. Let's talk about the big picture now. What does all this mean? Simple. There's no such thing as safe anymore. The Sinaloa Cartel, or whatever it's becoming, has graduated past borders. And El Chapo, he's no longer the architect, he's the relic, and some believe Los Demonios. Division 8, the entire new breed of operatives rising out of this chaos, they want him gone. So where do we go from here? Can US prisons handle the cartel's next move? Will the Guzman testimony stay sealed? Or will Division 8 leak it? And if Los Demonios still see El Chapo as a threat, who's their next target? Because make no mistake, they'll strike again. The only question is where, and who's next. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, tap one of the boxes on your screen to check out more videoed just like this.